Good evening. Not to show anyone's age or call anybody out, but how many of these can you identify? How many of you can identify all four of them? Okay, good. I'm in good company then. I just want to talk a little bit about relating to our students, to technology. How many of you can relate to this phone or had one? Mine was even this color, yes? And I know our kids these days, if they pick up the phone and don't know who it is, or they don't, because they don't use the phone, right? They text. But even I'm starting to be guilty of, I don't recognize the number, I'm not going to pick it up. In this case, we actually picked it up without knowing who was on the other line, and sometimes it really wasn't even for you. It was for the people down the road or that party line kind of situation even. The last one here, just kind of flashback of how many of you remember the payphones. I think we just recently, in the last few years, got rid of the one out here in the lobby, even at the high school. So it used to be a quarter, so you would call somebody who cares, or made sure you had a quarter so that you could get a hold of somebody in case you got in trouble. I'm just going to talk a little bit about the different generations, and not to give you a lecture on generations and where you fit, but to try to help you relate to what our teachers are struggling in some regards with trying to bridge that gap to some of our students. Others of them do a much better job. So we have everything from boomers to the generation X, Y, and Z. We call the generation Z, they are digital natives. They were born with technology. They live in it. Whew. So just out of curiosity, and again, not to point any fingers or call anybody out, but baby boomers, if you were born from 44 to 64, how many of those do we have in the room if you wish to claim that? All right. Your media consumption was probably radio, magazines, TV. You did enter the digital age because about 90% of you do use Facebook, and you like it. But originally, you came in with a TV, a magazine, a radio as the way that you got your news, or the way that, and you read it in a paper fashion instead of maybe online. Different shaping events, World War II, Vietnam, what's on the horizon. You're kind of balancing your children's success with your retirement goals. So that's kind of a boomer generation. Generation X, born from 65 to 79. How many of you fall in that category or wish to claim it? Most of us, I think. Excuse me. A lot of our parents, I feel like, are probably in Generation X here. Media consumption, kind of a staggering, but we watch an average of 165 hours of TV a month. We are heavy Facebook users. That's where we get our information. We give it and get it. We like to post on there. Shaping events, personal computing. This came about while we were in the prime. We're lost between two large generations. And then what's on the horizon, we actually carry and I say we because I fall into this category, but we carry the highest load of debt, which is not really that positive, but Generation Y, our what we call digital immigrants. How many of you fall into the 1980 to 94, okay? So you are, 94% of you still watch TV, but you're getting ready to cut the cord and go streaming and do everything online. You like mobile. You like to be mobile. You're shaping events, 9/11, the boom of the internet, and the social media, big-time social media piece. What's on your horizon is you're beginning to save for weddings and homes, that kind of a situation, making decisions. This is another piece that I kind of like, and it talks more about, or the focus here is about the educational pieces. So think of our students. I know that they're not in this generation, but they're close, some of them. Thinking outside of the box, living trendy. They are 24/7 online. They express their feelings and thoughts on social media. And in the next, kind of comparing that one to the next one, which is our students. All of our students fall into the Generation Z, which we call the digital natives. They're born with it, they love it, they understand it. They are huge consumers of social media, and they do it pretty well most of the time, even though against our wishes, at least as mine as a parent, I can speak to that. 41% spend at least 3 hours a day online. YouTube, Snapchat, Instagram, all those places that you probably find. Twitter and Facebook are kind of for us old people. I've been informed by most of our students, but they they still do take a liking sometimes to Twitter. Shaping events, having a Generation X as a parent is shaping for them, and sometimes we as parents are not keeping up with them. It changes so fast, and that's probably why some of you are even here this evening, but sometimes that is a good and a bad thing. The internet availability was to them as at a very young age. They've not lived really without it, and they don't know life without it. What's on the horizon for them is to learn about their personal finances and that avoidance of debt and how to get them to do that. So thinking about Y versus Z, these guys here are masters of social media. They demand 24-hour access. How many of you at home have a bedtime for phones and you put it in the kitchen or you put it in a certain place? Those are the things that they demand that they want or they think they need, or some of them in my house have an addiction to that sometimes. So it is one of those where we need to make sure we're monitoring what they're doing. They are born to swipe. I think of the kindergartner who walked in and the first thing they do is walk up to the picture and swipe their finger across it because that's what they know and that's where they've lived. They didn't really understand that that doesn't move. Let's see, what else in here? They text a lot, they video message, they love YouTube, and if they don't know how to do something, they're not scared to go find it and then fix it or do it by using YouTube. Just a general couple things here, more from the classroom perspective that I'm going to focus on here in a minute. They're bored by traditional lectures in the classroom. So my job as a digital learning director is to teach teachers how to instruct with the proper use of technology. We do feel like at times it's good to close the lid, and it's not all about technology, it's not all about the device all the time. So we are differentiating what we call differentiating our instruction in the classroom with or without technology because they do get bored. They are 20 seconds and moving to the next thing, 20 seconds and moving to the next thing because of how they were grown up, basically. 90% play video games. And those are things that we try to, we like to game, kind of make our education game-based, but after a certain part, we just need to get back down to basics that you and I probably agree with as far as the way we were taught. So trying to kind of differentiate and allow them to have both sides of that is kind of what we're looking for in our classrooms. This is a quote that I'm just going to transition to talking specifically now about Branson and how we do things here at this district or in this district. This quote I really like is that technology will never replace great teachers, because when technology first came out, everybody's like, well, why do you need the teacher in the room? They used to be the sage on the stage. They knew everything. They were the ones that you had to go to get the information, and now they're not. They still can be, so we are facilitators of learning, but they will never replace great teachers. But I also say that that technology in the hands of great teachers can be really transformational. Because if you think about the things that are going on in technology or the places they could go, things they could do in the right way, in the educational way, I think it could really have a profound effect in education in general. So to give you an idea, trying to talk about my job being, I try to give a lot of professional development with our teachers. These are 4 C's that I challenge them with a lot through that professional development. Does it allow the student to communicate? In their future jobs, some of them haven't been created yet. That's how quickly the world is moving. So can they communicate effectively with each other, not stuck in a device where they're not talking to anybody? They still have to communicate one-on-one with other people. Can they collaborate? Can you work well with others? We're going back to kindergarten, and can you really play well and play nice with others? Because in some of these jobs, even though some are isolated, the majority of those you're going to have to work with some kind of team at some point. Critical thinking, trying to take them to the next level. Does the use of technology allow them to move to the next level of learning? It's called depth of knowledge, not surface level regurgitation. It's we're diving in and we're actually going to have a little more critical thinking. The last one is also to allow them to be creative. Some of them like to do projects, some of them like to do videos, some of them are very good at different pieces or ways to show their learning. And so being creative with that and allowing some flexibility in your classroom is exactly what I try to have my teachers allow so that their students can kind of meet their creative need wherever that might be. How do we teach digital natives in Branson? This next slide I'm just going to go over briefly with you here, but 5 Google tablets is where we start in kindergarten. I'm going to kind of show you what some of the devices that we have in our district and how we keep your students safe by using them. This is a Google tablet. It's kind of small. It reminds you of a mini iPad if you're on the Apple, spectrum, so to speak. We have 5 of these per classroom in kindergarten and first grade throughout our district. Most of the time, if you see them, they'll have a big rubberized case on it because the littles sometimes drop them, and you know how that works. So that is what we felt like. The rationale here is they still need that tactile, that swipe, and that tactile fine motor, but they also don't need it all the time. So it's used at times in centers, in rotations, because we don't feel like at that level that we can give up play and hands-on learning and those kinds of things. It is not a device that we take home as a district. Moving to second grade. Second grade has 5 of these computers which flip all the way around. They're called a Chromebook Flip, and basically it becomes a tablet, or it can become the normal Chromebook with a keyboard so that they can do typing. And you may gasp at this, but second grade, we do try to start that home row conversation about how do we incorporate typing into what we're doing. If we're researching, we do want them to have proper mechanics in regards to typing, because that's a skill they're going to need for the rest of their life, obviously. It is not take home. They do not take those home here in our district. We have in grades 3 through 6, both intermediate schools this year, we assigned every student a Chromebook at open house. That student then took their Chromebook back to the cart in their classroom. It had their name on it, and they had a certain slot that it goes in. So every day they're responsible for learning and responsible for their Chromebook. Whether they use it or not is dependent upon what they're doing in the classroom at the time with their teacher. Those are also not a take-home device. They stay at the building, and then we have non-touch screen. They don't have a touch on there for the rest of basically 3 through 12th grade, but all of those students are a non-touch Chromebook. And we really did some research on whether touch was a necessary item, because it obviously does cost more. And we really are finding, along with a whole bunch of other districts in our area that are doing that same research, is that it's not just the die-hard have-to-have. Even though our kids need some fine motor, they usually do with the trackpad. I hate the trackpad, to be honest. I like having a mouse. But some of them can use it that way and get their fine motor skills there, or obviously we do it outside of the computer, and that's really where we want them to learn that. 7th and 8th grade, junior high, we do have a Chromebook assigned to every student currently. They're in a cart in every classroom. So when a student goes to first hour, they are number 3. When they go to second hour, they're number 5, depending on how the teacher organizes that. And they take the Chromebook in and out of the cart every hour. We got to thinking, number 1, that means we have to have a lot of Chromebooks, some of which aren't used every hour due to a plan hour with a teacher. And so we decided better use of money would be that we actually assign those. So starting next year, we will assign 1-to-1 Chromebooks. Each student will get one, and it will be a take-home device. We did that as a pilot this year at the high school and really felt like it is working well here. And so we are going to go ahead and implement that at the 7th and 8th grade level. That will be the next school year. So if you have students getting ready to go into junior high or are currently in junior high and will stay for 8th grade, then you will have a Chromebook that will come home with them. Grades 9 through 12, and again, what I just said, we have actually assigned those this year. We did it very quickly, surprisingly, but 1,400 students here at the high school got a Chromebook on the first Friday, I think this year. It will be something that they will have early on. Freshmen will probably get them at freshman orientation here next year. So we feel like that's kind of a well-oiled machine as far as the deployment of those, and we really haven't had too many breaks or anything like that that would cause us to deter from that plan. We do have a couple of things there that, number 1, only a student login will work on those devices, just so you're aware. We don't allow personal Gmail accounts and other places that they could go just due to the safety and security that we offer with those devices. Also, next year, starting with junior high, their device will be shut off at 11 o'clock in the evening, and then high school will actually have a shutdown at midnight. because we feel like, number one, sleep is important, at least to us it is, right? Because we never get it. But they need to disengage, we all do, but they need to disengage and disconnect for a little while, and we at least say, you can work all night on it, but at midnight, 11 o'clock, depending on your age, we're going to shut you off of that, and then it'll be back up at 5 a.m. So if you needed something, you can get back up early. So that's kind of about Chromebook or devices in our district. Subscriptions and student data. Just to kind of give you a brief overview, we are compliant with FERPA, where your data, if you're in a need to know, then you would see the data. COPA is the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act. And basically, if you go to our website and you click on Home and then COPA, C-O-P-P-A, it will list all of the subscriptions and places that we put your students' information. And it is lengthy, but that is district-wide, so it doesn't mean that every one of those is going to fit every student. It's a combination of, but we make sure every site that we use or allow your student to access is COPA compliant when it comes to subscriptions. That means things like MobiMax and our Envision, our math software, some of those things that you might recognize. Some of these also may have been sent home with you in a password, and a password with your student, because they can access those from any computer online. And they're welcome to, and we know they're safe, we enjoy, and we've kind of vetted those resources, so we approve of those, so they're welcome to use those. But we make sure they're also, where they're protected. The last thing I want to talk about is called Clever. Clever is a place where especially our little students, kindergarten, first grade, second grade, can go and they sign on one time. Some of them will scan a QR code, if you know what a QR code is. And then it logs them in, and then it's called what's single sign-on. SSO is what it stands for, if you see that. But it's single sign-on, and they can get to all the other apps with logging in one time versus logging in 10 times. For a kindergartner, that's a struggle. So one time is a struggle. Ask my kindergarten teachers. I think there's a few even here. But we are working really hard with our kindergartners, and they've done great with even entering their own data. It's not a generic password where it's just 4 letters or something like that. It's their own credentials, and they log in as themselves, as low as kindergarten, and goes all the way through 12th grade. So that Clever is what it's called. Clever. It's got a big C. If you see those anywhere, or you log into it, you can do that at home even. But those are all allowing our little kids to have single sign-on opportunities, which makes them get to their places better and faster, so they don't have to type everything. I think might turn it over to Mr. Glidewell, as our district technology director. He's going to talk about kind of what we call the backside of everything.
Thank you. So I just wanted to give you guys some knowledge and insight on some terms that we throw around, and we might throw around a lot, that maybe we do that without explaining what we're actually talking about. One of the things you're going to hear a lot in any news story regarding technology and education, or maybe where it breaks down, is you're going to hear about filtering. So I wanted to just explain what filtering means and what it means in our district. And I simply put up a picture of a water filter just to help bring that home, that what we want to do is, and it's a struggle, is we want to let the good stuff in while keeping the bad stuff out. It's pretty simple. That's what we want to do. But in our technology environment, we have a program that actually we have a number of programs that do that. And it helps us to keep moving with that as that changes, because as you might imagine, the internet and the network is a moving target. It's constantly evolving, it's constantly changing. And so that is a full-time job for quite a lot of people on our staff. We use a program called Go Guardian, and Go Guardian is a really helpful program, and it does a lot of things, but it helps us to filter the internet so we can make sure that certain words and phrases and images and things like that don't get through to our students. And the really important thing to know is that works all the time, right? Whether that device is at school or at home. And that's one of the most important things that I wanted to bring to you guys and talk to you about. For the folks that have older students, that Go Guardian is working regardless of where you're at. So if your student is at home and they do a search for something they shouldn't have, Go Guardian will block it, flag it, and it will alert a number of folks on the administrative team and let them know that, hey, this is happening, we need to take some type of intervention. So this happens in the classroom and at home. Another word, well, I'll come back to that. Our goal as a technology team, and I don't want to read it to you, but it is really important, is to dedicate, we're a team of dedicated professionals, and we want to use software solutions to enhance student learning while keeping our students and staff safe. And really what I wanted to bring home with that is we're not just putting software out there. I told you about GoGuardian, but it's a constant conversation between us and the administration team in the buildings. And there are actual live people that are watching the things that are happening and responding and reacting. So we're using the best software there is available, the industry standards, as well as highly trained professionals to make sure what's happening on our student devices and in our student accounts is what's good for education and what's good for kids. The other word that you might hear a lot is monitoring. And I really wanted to differentiate between filtering and monitoring for a reason. When we talk about filtering, we're talking about, it's kind of a passive thing that's happening where we're setting thresholds, words, phrases, and those things will trigger an action, right? So when a student does something, then this happens. It emails the administrator, it emails the counselor, it emails the technology team. When we talk about monitoring, we're talking more about a solution that lives in the classroom. For that teacher, whenever they assign students something to do on their Chromebook, then they can actually see what the students are working on. They can pull up a screen and see every one of their students' screens. And that's a really helpful tool. It's more of a corrective tool. So if a student starts to get off task, then they can go and be right there with them. And so it allows them to have some flexibility to use proximity in the classroom by standing close to students, which is always the most effective. But if for some reason they can't do that and they need to be somewhere else or at the front of a room working, they can have that safety net of knowing, hey, I can actually see what all my kids are doing. And I can tell you at the high school level, especially, we have a lot of teachers that are really, really good at this. And so as these students progress through the day, they're monitored all day. So they're filtered and they're monitored. So not only are we watching and trying to keep all the bad things from happening, from them seeing the bad things, but we're also actively watching what they do so we can correct that action if we need to. So I really wanted to make that differentiation between filtering and monitoring. I wanted to talk about some safeguards we also have in addition to those two big ones. And you can see up here, I've got 5 of them listed, and these are the 5 big ones. We actually have a lot of stuff going on in the background. YouTube restricted mode, and any parent, I know I fight this battle with my son as well, is a lot of stuff is on YouTube, and YouTube is a really good tool, and it's also really terrifying. And every few months there's a hoax or something that scares us. I know the latest one was the Momo thing that just got everybody riled up and scared, and it's the type of thing that keeps me as a technology director, it keeps me up at night. Like I'm literally awake just thinking about it. What are our kids doing? How do we keep them safe? We have YouTube restricted mode, which is a really awesome tool that any video shown in our district on YouTube has to be approved by a teacher or administrator. And that's a physical action. We have to hit approve. So if a student or even a staff, for that matter, tries to pull up a video, it will say this video is restricted. And somebody has to go in and hit that button. And that's a really valuable thing for our teachers. And so and what we find is the teachers are vetting their videos really good, approving them, and it really takes away some of that guesswork in it. Google Safe Search is just an added tool that allows us to make sure that what's being searched out on Google, what's returning in Google Images search is safe for our students. So it's just an additional safeguard in the Google environment. Google Document, Gmail monitoring, reporting, and alerts. So this is kind of the next phase. When it started, we just wanted to know what they were doing, what they were searching for, what they were looking for. And what we found was that's not where the scary things can happen, and that's not where kids can get off track. It's actually in some of the tools that we use that we heavily rely on, whether it's email or Google Docs. And so what you might be alarmed to know is a kid can open up a document and invite other kids in it, and it's a really good tool for kids to work and collaborate on a project. It's also something that could get kids off track. They figured out really quick, hey, I got a chat room. I can just open that up and start talking. And so we now have tools that actually monitor those documents in real time. So if a student opens up a document, types a bunch of stuff, and then deletes it, we can actually see that. We can see when they typed it, what font it was, what time of the day it was, and when they deleted it. And so it really gives us, that's one of the most valuable things that we have out there, because that's where we're finding it's that student communication piece that can be scary at times. Lost and stolen devices for the older students. If we have a device that goes missing or gets stolen, we have the ability to know where that device is and be able to go recoup that device. So there's a lot of things that we have on the backside that we really lean on heavily to make sure that we're keeping our students safe. And the last thing is probably the most important to me is self-harm reporting. And we're really proud of this, and we're really proud of the company we use, GoGuardian, I told you about earlier. Actually has some really smart machine learning. It's stuff that even I don't understand, but it goes and it can watch that student's browsing activity and what they're typing in and the conversations they're having with their students. And it knows, hey, this student is struggling, and they're starting to look at things that could be leading towards harming themselves or hurting themselves or commit suicide, and immediately will alert a team of people. It will pop up and say, hey, it will pop up with the suicide awareness hotline. It will also alert the counselors in the building. It alerts the principals. And there are countless stories of other districts where they've actually saved lives with this tool to be able to know these things that maybe in the past were hidden in a book or just up in their head. But as Dr. Brenner told you earlier, these digital natives, they live online. Their thoughts are online. Everything that they're saying is online. So as scary as that is, it's also really valuable because now we can be proactive and make sure that, hey, we're keeping these kids as safe as possible. So those are some of the other things that we have in place at school. All right, so at this point, I'm going to turn it back over to Dr. Arnett, and he's going to facilitate any questions that might come up and also talk to you about what's coming up next. Thank you.